So you have no idea where we are?
Admiral.
What are you doing here?
We're lost.
And unlucky, too. I am Amanra. Prepare your men. We have to defend this area.
Defended against what?
This oasis holds treasures beyond water. A relic is buried here. My enemies are on their way to try to take it.
What does that have to do with us?
Look around. Those passes are the only entrance to this oasis. Escape through them and you will run headlong into the worshippers of Set. You can choose to die there, or fight here with me. Gereg, Ak.
You heard the lady. Strengthen these defenses and prepare for attack.
So welcome to Egypt in Age of Mythology on Titan difficulty. We meet Amanra, who basically tells us, you either help me or you're gonna die painfully to the worshippers of Set. You're given a number of villagers, units, and a couple of buildings, including tents, which will help with your population cap. Now, because you don't have no town center, you can't build more villagers. If you lose all the villagers, you lose the mission because you need the villagers to defend the dig site. The goal of the mission is to survive and dig out the relic, the sword of the guardian, as it were. You will have attacks from 3 different locations. Now, I did make a mistake in this mission in that I do start with some units at some of these entrances, and I didn't move them back, so they ended up dying very quickly. That's on me, I just plainly forgot about them, and I was also more busy building a wall here to block off the path. So you can't block off with walls the main paths, because then they'll just attack the walls. What you do then is build what you could call an inner wall to protect the dig site. By doing so, the AI, the enemy AI, will be forced into going around and attacking near your initial lumber camp. Worth saying, abandon the lumber camp so that you can focus your defense. Also build a wall just to the southwest of the relic to block off the path there, and that means that there's only a narrow path that the AI can use to attack your settlement. Now, in terms of attacks, the AI will throw a lot of siege equipment at you. Siege towers, catapults, and even scarabs. But the main threat that you're facing are the swarms of champion spearmen. I believe they're fully upgraded and they are going to throw a significant amount of them against you. Your heroes can deal with a lot of them, at least initially, but eventually they will be overwhelmed unless you get troops to support them. The more you dig out a relic, the worse the attacks get. Now, once you've built up your initial walls, you will want to pretty much ignore lumber for a while, because the Egyptians don't need lumber, with the exception of some units and some upgrades. But they don't need lumber for the sake of structures. Their structures either are constructed for free, though at a slower pace than Greek or Norse structures, or they cost gold. For instance, Egyptian farms cost gold. The Egyptians are gold heavy. Now, you worship Isis in this mission, so that means you get god power that will vastly increase your gold collection rate for a temporary amount. And using that, after you've gotten all the upgrades, can give you a significant amount of gold that can last you for much of the mission. But initially, you don't want to focus on getting resources, specifically food and gold, and also getting the upgrades so that you can collect those resources faster. All the while, you are going to be attacked by those champion spearmen that I mentioned. But ignore the dig site, don't dig it up, build barracks so you can get units, get your economy in order, get some wood for the upgrades that you're going to need, and then move on fully on food and gold. You can have 3 villagers or even 2 villagers after you've gotten all the upgrades on wood, a decent amount on food, and a decent amount on gold. Speaking about food, you do start with a number of animals to hunt, but they will run out. Now, the way I build my worlds here, I actually cut myself off from some of the animals that were available to hunt later on, and I would actually eventually end up risking my villagers and losing some of them to actually go hunt them. Now, with a decent amount of food gathered, wood gathered, upgrades gained, I start moving my villagers on gold. But I do wait for the final gold upgrade before I use the god power to increase that. Also note, once you get your barracks and once you get medium axemen, what you want to do in this mission is you want to get medium axemen. You are limited to classical age. Get medium axemen and just keep pumping them out. Maybe even get some slingers. Once the final gold upgrade is finished, you use the god power, use the prosperity power, and you're gonna be rich. You don't only have one gold mine, I believe. Maybe there is a second one, I just don't remember. But you won't need more than your initial gold mine for this entire mission. Also, you want to construct a blacksmith so you can get the unit upgrades. While the enemy does have champion spearmen, axemen, even medium axemen, will be able to deal with them without too many issues. The problem for the rest of the mission is maintaining production of axemen and slingers to an extent, while also ensuring you survive, while also ensuring you're digging out at a pretty decent pace and surviving against the enemy attacks. Be warned that the catapults may also attack some of your buildings that are exposed. For instance, the barracks that I built up in this mission, they're actually both going to be destroyed by the end of this mission because they're actually in range of the catapults. Now, let's talk a bit about the walls. Generally speaking, though there are some exceptions, generally speaking, if you do what I do, and I do this in pretty much every mission, if you build a wall and you block off most approaches to your base, but you leave a gap at a certain point, and this works in Age of Empires 2 as well, then the AI is going to ignore your wall and instead go for that gap as long as it exists, which means you can defeat significantly larger armies than your own with just a couple of units in that choke point. Though sometimes the AI will try and run past your choke point to attack, let's say, a tower or villagers. It's worth knowing that in this particular mission, the AI does seem to be very aggressive towards your gathering structures, as I would discover later on in this mission, and also very aggressive towards your villagers. They do want to eliminate your villagers because that's how they win this particular mission. And that's really all there is to it. Just get your economy in order, get your food in order. You do have a food upgrade at your granary that gives you free food. You also start with actually 2 priests, though I made the mistake of losing one of them because I didn't move him from the initial entrance. And as you unlock more and more and more of the relic, the attacks will intensify. You'll start getting more scarabs and more siege engines, all that coming for you. Eventually, you will get an attack. You will get some slingers. You will get crucially a son of Osiris attacking your settlement. The son of Osiris isn't too big of a deal to tackle, really. Just swarm him with your units. Be careful though about the scarabs, because when they die, let's assume you're attacking the scarabs with a swarm of axemen. When scarabs do die, they do produce, they do create an AoE around them, so they do some splash damage when they're dying. So you want to avoid losing a bunch of your axemen. Also, protect your priests, at least the one that starts near the dig site, because he's your only healer, and he can be quite useful to keep alive. And just survive that. The attacks don't intensify past a certain point, and when I talk about the intensity of the attacks, all that AI is really gonna get beyond just a couple of slingers and the Son of Osiris, all the AI is gonna get are a bunch of siege equipment, which you can easily deal with for the most part. And that's all there is to say. moving on to the next mission.
The Sword of the Guardian, used by Horus to defeat Set once before. Now one of his followers, Kemsit, seeks to take it.
Kemsit? He is your enemy?
He has captured a temple to Osiris near here. There is a Guardian at the temple, but it sleeps. If we return the sword to the Guardian, it will awaken.
It seems the gods have smiled on us.
The Oasis village near here is loyal to the Dark God Set. They enslave other local villagers to mine gold for Kemsit.
Help us escape our captors!
Ak. You-e-er. Tai-you. Tai-you. Ak. At-you. Ak.
Are given an army of 6 chariots, 4 slingers, the sword bearers, and of course our heroes. However, the enemy army that is in the nearby area is quite a bit stronger than what you have. There's a bunch of Anabites, slingers, and heavy spearmen. The spearmen and slingers would be easy enough to deal with, but the Anabites are a different discussion. They are certainly glass cannon units, but they're capable of doing significant damage and actually killing your heroes and the units. So what I do with ranged units is I shoot at a couple of them, draw a bunch of them towards my heroes on the high ground, and eliminate them one by one, sufficiently weakening them so that I can free the villagers. There are, however, a bunch of Anabites that might be a bit further away, so just be careful so that you don't lose villagers. There's a total of 10 villagers over here in this area mining gold, and you need to send 5 of them to the nearby town center, the nearby allied town center, in order to gain control of it. Just be careful about how you advance here. Don't pick a fight you can't win. Kill as many units as you can. And once the villagers are free, clear a path with your heroes to the town center, and then send the villagers as well as the sword bearers and what remains of your chariots and slingers towards the allied town center. There are going to be a bunch of mummies. There's going to be a relic as well along the way, one that gives you more favor. Once you arrive with 5 villagers at the nearby town center, you will gain control of it, as well as being given a good amount of resources, specifically wood and gold.
Look, our men have returned.
Thank you, strangers. Kemsit forced us from our home, the sacred city of the Guardian. We will join you to defeat him.
Grig. Do I dare?
Bring the sword to the sleeping Guardian before his army reaches it.
Grig. Are you?
Now, the reason you don't want to pick all the villagers with you from the initial gold mines is, well, you want to use those gold mines. Though, truth be told, there is a decent amount of gold anyway near the town center, so you could reasonably move all of the villagers with you and you wouldn't necessarily have too many issues. You do start in the Archaic Age, and you don't even start with the God Power. You will get rain from Ra shortly thereafter, but don't use this until you're actually in the Heroic Age. You are limited to the Heroic Age. And this is where I get into my strategy. In a lot of these missions, I try and build up my economy to a fairly significant amount. The bottleneck, of course, of building the economy is, of course, the fact that you can only build villagers from town centers, and there is only a limited number of town centers in pretty much every single campaign mission. And so as a result of that, it does take time. What I tend to do is I try and use my heroes to survive the initial onslaught, maybe build a couple of units to help me out, and then start advancing in the different ages. You do start with the temple, so advancing to the classical age can be pretty quickly. Now, of the 2 gods that you have as a choice in the classical age, I go with Bast. The reason is the myth unit that you get is better, and the upgrades, specifically the economic upgrades, are well worth it compared to the alternative. Now, you also have Ra as your main god. Ra, among other benefits, gives your priest the ability to empower buildings, the same way your pharaoh can empower buildings. It's not quite as good, the pharaoh will do a better job of it, but it is still a benefit to the production, to the build speed, to the resource gathering capability of your buildings. So start building a lot of villagers. I'd probably say 20 on food or so, that should be your aim, 10 on gold or 14 on gold even, and then a couple on wood. You don't need a lot of them on wood, you only need enough on wood to get the upgrades from the blacksmith, get wood upgrades from the blacksmith in general, get some economic research benefits, and then of course maybe construct some range units. So building range units is not necessarily going to be a priority in this mission, at least not using wood. Though in this mission you are against the timer. Kemsit's army is going to start marching its way towards the city where the Guardian sleeps, and ideally you will be able to send the sword there and awaken the Guardian before his army arrives. Though to be fair, you can also wait and eventually defeat the army, just build up your economy. You don't need to rush this mission, you have a decent amount of time all the same. So build up your economy, get a bunch of peasants on food and gold in particular, get the upgrades, get to the heroic age. And when it comes to the heroic age, I do prefer worshipping Hathor. The reason is because Hathor is going to give you the laser crocodiles. Though the alternative would be pretty decent as well, but you don't need a tank unit in the form of the scarabs, which is your alternative. Having a laser crocodile is going to be pretty good. Now I do need to talk a bit about the way Egypt in general works, and the way their army works. Egypt doesn't necessarily have the best units in the game, but what they do have is the capability of spamming them to a degree that no one else can. And between the fast production by default of a lot of these units, as well as the pharaohs and in this case priests that can also speed up that production, as well as a powerful economy, Egypt can spam units in a way the other factions simply can't. And that's exactly what you want to do. Specifically the Migdal stronghold, and to get elephants. Just spam elephants. And eventually you want to get an army of elephants, as well as an army of the laser crocodiles, as well as some priests to deal with enemy myth units. The city itself is heavily defended by an army of myth units and chariots. So myth units in general for the enemy will tank, whereas the chariots will do damage. However, war elephants are a pretty good solution to this specific problem. So build up your economy, get to the heroic age, get one Migdal stronghold, empower that Migdal stronghold, get the upgrade to produce units faster, get houses, max out your population cap, and then just continuously spam units. While the enemy does have a significant number of units, with a larger number of elephants, priests, and laser crocs, you will be able to overcome enemy resistance. You can also get the axemen if you so desire. I did so in this particular mission. You don't need to worry about building trade carts or anything like that. You do certainly have enough resources to continuously produce units in this mission. By the way, when speaking about rain, which is a god power that increases your farm capacity, it is best to use that god power once you get to the heroic age and once you got the farm upgrade in the heroic age, so you can maximize its output. Now, the Guardian himself lies behind two sets of gates. The main gate, the outer gate and the inner gate. And between the outer gate and the inner gate, there's a vast number of enemy units, as well as a Migdal stronghold. But a large number of elephants will be able to break through with that. One of the things I could have done in this mission was to actually construct some siege towers to take down the Migdal stronghold, as well as to take down the walls far quicker. Also interesting to note is that the enemy AI does have a bunch of monuments, for Isis I believe it is, that will prevent you from using god powers inside the city. So if you're going to use god powers, like the Eclipse for instance, you're going to want to use that outside. You're going to want to cast that outside the settlement, because you want to use it inside. By the way, just continuously produce laser crocs and war elephants in particular break through the enemy defenses, and hopefully do so before the enemy AI has broken through the allied villages that are blocking the way to Kempsit's army. The AI will produce a large number of Avengers as tanking units that are also capable of doing quite a bit of damage. Laser crocs and heroes will be able to tackle them, and they'll also produce a pretty good amount of chariots as well to try and stop you.
The sword bearers.
Bad war elephants, really tanky units, really capable of dealing with. In fact, I would dare argue that of the Migdal Stronghold units, they're the only ones that are worth producing in a lot of ways. They just don't have an easy counter. Regardless of what anyone throws against them, with the exception of like some very powerful myth units, the war elephants are capable of dishing out a significant amount of damage and fight a lot in return. They're very, very tanky units. In fact, they're one of the few tanking units in the entire roster that Egypt does have available. Either way, you should hopefully get to the Guardian with the sword before Kempsit's army does arrive. Though you don't necessarily need to use the Guardian to kill Kempsit's army. A constant production of war elephants and laser crocs will be able to deal with his army. He does have some champion war elephants as well as some Avengers, but your units will be able to tackle them. I just sent the Guardian in this particular situation to have an easier time of it. And that is the mission. The Guardian is awakened, and we've gotten the first Osiris piece under our control. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and let me know what you think of this new style of doing these kind of videos. I decided to change it up. I think the age of regular Let's Plays has really come to an end unless we're talking about things like Twitch. Yeah, stay tuned for more.
A hero has fallen. A hero has fallen. A hero has fallen. A